Hello, hello. Oh my God, thank you. So friendly. Welcome to another session of the Southern Festival of Books. I'm Christy Lynch. I'm the associate editor of Book Page, and I'm very excited to be here with none other than Andrew Sean Greer. Yay! Author of Less is Lost. This is supposed to be secret. Let me move this.
It's right in the middle.
Sorry, we're here for this. Here you go. So we will be taking some questions at the end of the session today, so keep that in mind as you listen in case your curiosity builds. Before we start, I want to remind everybody that Parnassus is the official bookseller for the Southern Festival of Books. When you purchase one of the books that you hear about this weekend from their tent over on the plaza, a portion of the proceeds go to the festival and help to keep it free. And so if you love the Southern Festival of Books and want to help it continue to exist, a really fun way to do that is to buy some books from Parnassus. The festival is also supported in part by donations from individuals like you. And so if you really appreciate this event and want to show your appreciation, you can donate in a couple of ways. You can visit the Humanities of Tennessee tent in the plaza and donate in person. You can go to their website, or they have Venmo now this year. And so you can donate directly to them. It's at HUMTN, Humanities Tennessee. And send them a couple dollars right now if you want to. There are also, I hear, some QR codes around. Have you seen those? So yeah, you can scan a QR code.
I think they should put those in the beer garden. You think you're looking at the menu, and in fact, you're donating.
That's clever. Is anybody from the Southern Festival of Books here? Please note that.
Free idea.
Free idea. You can also visit chapter16.org to sign up for a weekly newsletter. It's got articles, book reviews, poetry, essays, information about upcoming author events. It is a great way to stay connected to the literary community in Tennessee, so check that out as well. So today we are going to hear from Pulitzer Prize-winning author Andrew Sean Greer. He's the author of 6 works of fiction, including The Confessions of Max Tivoli and, of course, Less. And then he has done all kinds of other wonderful things. He's taught at the Iowa Writers Workshop. He was on the committee to select the National Book Award once, which we spoke about earlier, and about how strange it was. And he has also himself won the California Book Award, the New York Public Library Young Lions Award, and the Pulitzer Prize. So not too shabby. We're so glad you're here.
I'm tickled to be here.
Welcome to the Southern Festival of Books. Have you spent much time in the South before?
Well, my family is from, you consider Kentucky the South, probably.
Yes.
Is South Carolina the South?
Yes.
Okay.
Even North Carolina.
You ask them in Alabama if they think North Carolina is the South. They put vinegar on their barbecue.
I'm from Alabama.
Well, man, we've changed. I would say no, I haven't, honestly. I mean, except for Christmas, I was never down here. I grew up outside of D.C. in Maryland, which is not the South. Hey, Maryland, Rockville, Maryland. I grew up next to where'd you? Oh, yeah, Mason-Dixon line. Yeah. It's the South, according to those surveyors. But in fact, it was doing research for a book that became Less is Lost, but I didn't know that's what it was going to be, that I rented an RV, and I realized I didn't know anything about the South. And I spent 3 weeks in the Southwest, another region I'd never been to, and then 3 weeks in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Louisiana.
That's the South. Those are
I did
definitely
that.
the South.
That's what was in my head, yeah.
I heard a rumor, and by which I mean I heard you say it in another interview, that you were scared of Alabama.
That is right. That's right. I mean, the thing I say when people tell me what the book is about, I'm like, well, I like to go towards what I'm most afraid of. And for Les, it was turning 50 and being alone and without love and death. And for Les's loss, it was Alabama. Because I'd never been there. And my ignorance was complete on the subject.
Yes.
So that's the first place I went. I rented a camper van in Atlanta, Georgia. And I say camper van because it means it doesn't have a bathroom in it. It's like just me and but it was a cool one. Like it had like a hanging fake plant and a macrame holder, kind of a hipster van, which was not going to help me in Alabama, I thought. So I went. This is so embarrassing. So embarrassing I put it in the book. I knew nothing, and I was like, my mother was most afraid for me as a gay man in Alabama, and I'm like, I've lived in Montana, not similar, but like laterally, maybe similar, and so I went to Walmart, and I got myself like a really giant T-shirt and giant cargo shorts. And like those wraparound sunglasses that no homosexual would ever wear. And I thought my disguise is complete. And of course, what was interesting is absolutely everyone knew I was gay. Yeah.
Yeah. We do have gay people in Alabama.
I did find that. That's actually I had lunch, the first place I went was to a lesbian bar in a small town in Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, coffee bar place, yeah.
Yes, NASA is also in Alabama. It's a dynamic place.
It is. I loved Alabama.
Okay, just checking.
I'm not afeard of it anymore.
I'm so happy to hear that. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely things that everyone should be afraid of in Alabama, but also wonderful things, which is what I want you to know.
And also things to be afraid of in the white state of California.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So be afraid everywhere is what I
Be
learned.
afraid everywhere. That's exactly what I was getting at. So, in case anyone here has not yet read Less is Lost, could you tell us a little bit what it is?
It's a follow-up to a book I wrote called Less, which is about a man on a trip around the world. But it's not exactly a sequel. I worked really hard to put in all of the plot information you need to know, which is there is no plot. And Less doesn't have a plot. I just told it to you in the beginning of the book, so you could just read this book. And this is a book about a mediocre or a writer with middling success who, for financial reasons, is forced to accept every offer he can get. Writers get a lot of weird offers, and it sends him on a trip across the United States, west to east. I mean, how hokey is that? That's just unacceptable. But
America, it's an anomaly. There's a lot of different places. Yeah, that's the book.
that's the book. What I was mostly thinking about, and I think a lot of us think about, is like how do this many million people still stay together? Because mom and dad are fighting. That's the sound in the United States right now, and a lot of people are, you probably are, I'm sure there's parts that like want to cut off parts of the South and just make that its own place, and California is always pretending it's going to float off into the sea with Oregon, Maybe that'll happen. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but I was curious about it because I was feeling a little sad about the state of things. No matter what side you're on, it feels awful. And as usual, to make it a comedy, which means making fun of myself, So the idea that I went in totally ignorant and bought wraparound sunglasses is what's funny about Alabama, not the Hound Dog Cemetery.
First of all, I love the Hound Dog Cemetery. I was already familiar with it and shrieked with delight to see it appear in the book.
It's wonderful.
Yes, that was really made it authentic, I thought. But yeah, your selection of the wraparound sunglasses and the cargo shorts, that should have done the trick. Your instincts were not that far off.
I just think it's all about accessorizing. If you tuck in the shirt and cinch it, like the things you do are well, you can't wear clothes like this, then it's not really wearing it right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what everyone is thinking about who wears wraparound sunglasses is the importance of accessorizing.
Accessorize. Like, do you wear them on, when you're not wearing them, do you wear them on your hair? Do you wear them sort of backwards? I've seen that too.
Yeah, backwards or just dangling around the neck. That's a popular pose.
You mean
right?
like on the t-shirt?
Uh-huh.
Tucked? Okay, I hadn't thought about that.
Well, something to think about, I guess.
Next time.
So I'm sure that you have been asked this question a number of times since this book has come out, but was it intimidating to write a follow-up to a book that was so acclaimed?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think you're a writer. The biggest problem is not what will they say on Twitter, but I'm a terrible writer. How can I get through this day? I mean, that's the main intimidation, is just the self-doubt, which is essential to being a writer. And maybe the great fear was that I would become an arrogant jerk in my own writing and be like, it's all brilliant, as the Pulitzer Prize committee wrote, you know? But luckily I have a deep well of self-doubt, and but I started fiddling around with writing more about Arthur Less, and after I won the Pulitzer Prize, which was like 9 months after my book came out, so well into working on another book, my agent said, you can't write a sequel to it. You don't write a sequel to a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel.
Except for all the people who did.
I mean, I would say Richard Ford did it, and John Updike, and Phil Roth, and
Elizabeth Strout.
yeah. And Elizabeth Strout just did it.
Yeah, just now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's allowed to do it. Does she get that question at every place? Probably.
Probably.
Because it's weird. I think all of us, also what happened in the pandemic is I think a lot of writers, we were like, the world's going to end, I'm going to write whatever I want in whatever way I want. And those of us who found a really wonderful feeling and with a protagonist and a narrator, you just want to go back to that because it's so fun.
Well, I think it was a great choice. We need...
Oh, good.
It has been a tough couple of years, and it is really wonderful to return to characters who are so pleasant to spend time with, and so, you know, heartwarming perhaps is not the right word, except that that's true. That's how I feel. Spending time with them is a little bit softer inside, and I think that we could use a bit of that, so I'm glad.
Oh, good. I mean, it's probably why I wrote it for me,
Yeah.
not for you, but I'm glad it works for you.
That's fine.
I mean, because that's who I had to live with them longer than you do reading the book. So I wanted to have pleasant people to be around.
Yes. So there is a lot more of Arthur Less's family, his biological family, in this book. And, you know, we meet his dad, we meet his sister, Rebecca, who is hilarious and so charming. And the more that we see...
Kind of like Rebecca a little bit.
So, that's only if you've read it will you get that.
She's ringing for the maid as a...
Okay, sorry if you haven't read it. I'm really
forget,
sorry.
Forget. Buy the book, yeah. And then watch this video again twice.
But the more that we get to see of Arthur's family, the more that he makes sense in context. In particular, you realize that his, you know, what you might call an anxiety disorder is perhaps not an anomaly, but in fact connected to a vast system of family members just teeming with anxiety. And so that made a lot of sense to discover. I'm wondering how many of these details about his family and about his relationship to his family you already knew before you actually wrote them into the story in Less is Lost.
I'm glad that you asked that question because it makes it seem like maybe I did have like a legendarium. We were talking Tolkien earlier, so I thought I'd watch the video twice. No, nothing. I wrote Less, that was the end, that was the book. I didn't think of anything else, and then I'm now learning how it must happen for people who pick up the characters again. Suddenly, he had a sister, because I needed someone to bounce things off of, and I thought, oh, his sister's great. And I don't have a sister, but my friend Daniel does, named Rebecca, so I just put her right in the novel. I asked her permission. And then I thought about his father and what would be most fun. And I thought, his father has to be like a crazy con man. That's more fun than my dad is like a really lovely man who's probably a spy. But that, I can't do that in a novel. He'll lose his clearance.
Right. That's so considerate.
Thoughtful is the first word people say about me.
I see. Yeah, his dad is also the sort of person who is comfortable wearing like a safari outfit. That really says a lot about a person to choose that and wear it in public.
Oh, I thought very carefully about the clothing. Can we get a round of applause for our outfits today? Look at this. How could you even think when you picked out these, oh, this will coordinate perfectly, I'm sure. And also, I think these shoes, which you probably can't see until you watch the video again, are
They're
fantastic.
yellow.
They're yellow.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I kept trying to get someone into a belted safari suit because I think they're hilarious. I would totally wear one, yeah.
You're giving a little bit of that sort of.
Am I?
It's just the neutral colors.
Yeah, this is a gay idea of camouflage. Like when I stand in a botanical garden, you can't see me.
Yeah. A butterfly might land right on your shoulder.
Right on my shoulder.
That's a nice thought. So there's also a lot more of Freddie in this book. Now that the identity of the narrator, sorry if you haven't read the first book, spoilers, but now that the identity of the narrator is no longer being sort of kept a secret, we get to hear more from him and hear more of his voice and hear more about his own desires and ambitions, which was wonderful because he's so wonderful. And this has nothing to do with my question, but my favorite moment in the whole book was when he's on the porch at that party and he gets into a conversation with somebody who, as an experiment, has not touched another person in 6 months, and then finds out that he won the bet, and he gets to it, and he just reaches out and puts his hand on Freddie's chest, and Freddie begins to cry, and I was very moved. I don't know. It was just the unexpected sort of human connection when you're not expecting it.
I can't. I'm so glad you brought that out. Actually, like that was a pandemic moment for me. I was like, a lot of us had not touched another human being in a long time, and I thought about that and how I could put it in the book without writing about the pandemic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's lovely. It's a lovely moment. That's not the question I was going to ask. So because there is more Freddie in this book, I'm wondering how it was different to write a book about these same characters that divides the focus, not necessarily evenly, but more evenly between two people instead of all Arthur all the time.
Yeah, it's like a boyfriend narrator who's telling about Arthur Less's journey, and some people wonder, how would he know all of these details? And the magic of narration is my answer. It was just so fun to be able to write that way, because you have a narrator who can be omniscient and can also go into the thoughts of the protagonist, and also themselves be in first person and say what they were doing, and then also talk to the reader and saying, I'm sure you're wondering how long a gay man can survive in the desert. We're about to find out. All of that meant I could do anything I wanted, so it was really, really fun, and in fact, I wrote way too many pages and had to cut it back because I was overdoing it. But also because this is a book about what happens after the happy ending, what is a relationship after you're together and start to irritate each other, I thought Freddie needed to have there was an imbalance in the relationship, a narcissistic writer and a clearly talented high school English teacher. And the balance needed to go back towards Freddie. And so having him be the narrator helped with that, and then it was great fun. At a certain point, he just takes over the book.
It is nice, and yeah, he kind of gets his due, and
I'm glad to hear that. Good, yeah.
Yeah, we learned that like he can write too, and in fact, perhaps has been doing so the whole time. And anyway, it was just really nice to get a little more of him transparently instead of secretly on the page. Do you speak German Really?
No, I don't speak German. No.
Okay.
I took a class. I was in Germany for a while on like a fellowship, and I took a class. And after 2 months, I still couldn't order bread at the local store because I was learning how to decline everything. And I thought, this is an emergency. I can't learn this language. So I learned enough to be able to badly translate with Google Translate. But I do speak a very poor Italian.
Well, that's even better.
So that is what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of, what do I sound like at a dinner party when I'm like, I have an opinion about local politics, and they're like, oh, do tell us, American. You know, and I'm like, I think the watermelon's going to lose. The watermelon. Say it again on tape. Yeah. I just sound ridiculous, but they're so nice about it in Italy. Yeah.
That's nice that they are nice.
Yeah.
Do you know there's a scene in Less is Lost where Arthur floods a compound accidentally, long story short, and he meets some German people. He's trying to communicate with them, and he's trying to say the word flood, and he keeps saying pan flute. Yeah. And and they're like, what are you saying? He says, Noah and the pan flute. And they're like, ooh, I don't know what that means. But I was just wondering if the words for pan flute and flood are actually similar.
Yes, they're actually similar in German. Yeah, that's what I would do is I would look it up and see how close, but the funniest word that sound was one letter off from flute. Yeah.
That's a good one.
I mean, that's a great waste of time. You could do that for days. Yeah.
That counts as writing.
It does, yeah.
That
See, you
counts.
just mentioned it, so it's a gem. It was worth polishing.
Worth polishing.
And
that
flute.
Yeah. So when I read or write humor, I always think of something that I heard Lori Moore say once. Lori Moore, of course, is a very funny short story writer. And
Who lives here.
Who lives here? She could be here among us. I don't know. So I heard her say once that when she writes, she doesn't sit down to write a funny story, that everything she sits down to write is meant to be sad. Yeah. And then, of course, it's hilarious, which makes sense to me, but I'm wondering, do you ever sit down to write a funny story?
No. I know that makes sense to me too, but I think it just sounds weird to everyone out there. In fact, what I would sit down to do is I would try to think, what is the most humiliating thing that has ever happened to me, and let me put it in this book. And there were moments I would write something and I would be in tears, not laughing tears, like sad tears, but it won't look that way to you. Because I was trying to learn how to get over it. And certainly there were parts of Less that were some of the saddest things I could think of that none of you would notice. And in this book too, I think like the idea of America right now makes me really sad, but this book, you won't get that from it. But I think comedy comes exactly from that. Comedy doesn't mean that you don't give a hoot. It means you really care, and you actually can't bear to be sad about it anymore. You have to go through it. And I learned that from, I worked in Italy for a little while for a 96-year-old baronessa. She's now 96. And I would take her on drives, and she would say, Andy, tell me a story about, and it would be something. And I would tell her the story, and she would hit me with an umbrella, and she would say, that is not a very funny story. And I'm like, no, it's not. And then I understood, it was like, she wanted me to transform them and entertain her. She wasn't interested in like these ordinary, oh, poor me. Yeah, she didn't like that because she had plenty of that. She'd lived through a war, but her stories about World War II are funny.
So that reminds me. I've heard you say that Less was your first comic novel. Your other novels are indeed more of the heart-stirring variety. So now that you've done a little bit of both, do you think it is more difficult to make a reader cry or to make a reader laugh?
Oh, that is a good question. I think it's harder to make them laugh. honestly, like out loud. I think if someone is on an airplane and then they laugh out loud and their person next to them pushes the you know, the flight assistant button, that you've done something great. But I mean, cry's hard too, but I've certainly done that. But I remember when a book I've actually laughed out loud in. Like, I keep those on my shelf.
Yeah, laughter is an involuntary response. And so the art of manufacturing surprise in humor is very difficult. You're not really, when you make someone cry, it's not usually from surprise unless you scare them so badly that they burst into tears. But usually it's more of a building up, and there's kind of a formula to that. But
And I like the laugh cry, where something is super funny, but it's also poignant. You're like, ah, like tears burst into your eye. I mean, that would become, if it came with also vomit, then you would get the trifecta.
that sounds incredibly unpleasant.
My next book.
Laughing, crying, throwing up. Actually, isn't that a thing that the teens say?
That's on
laughing,
TikTok,
crying,
right?
throwing up. Oh, resident teen on the front row here confirms. Thank you for your service.
Resident teen. He's here for a year. Yeah.
Yes, he's in residence. It's sponsored. Did you know? You have to stay here. Sorry. So I guess in that same vein, you know, people want to know how to write humor. People take classes about it. I have my suspicions about how much of it can be learned. So much of comedy seems intuitive. And I'm wondering what your experience is, what you think. How much of humor or humor writing is intuitive, or can it be a skill that is learned?
I was at a school where recently where they asked me if I could, they said I could teach anything I wanted to in the world. I was like, I'll teach a class about comedy. And I was like, we'll start with Don Quixote and we'll go on up. And I was like, forget it from the beginning. It's ruined. Because if they don't think Don Quixote's funny, then it's over. And it is long, and the laughs are far between. But it's hilarious. And I'm like, Moby Dick's hilarious, but no one else seems to think it is. So I was like, there's no way, and I don't know what I'd say about it, except, isn't that funny? Why is it funny? I don't know. I don't speak antique Spanish, so I don't know the original joke, but it's good in the translation. You know, it would just be nonsense because I don't know anything. And I've been talking with friends who are better known for their comedy, and I was saying, like, you know what? It turns out to me that, like, either it's funny the first time I write it down, or it's really never funny again. Like, if it's like, it's all, because it's the instinct of timing, which the great thing about being a writer is you can get it wrong. It's not a stand-up act, you know. You can get rid of the bad stuff and keep all the good stuff, and no one knows. So you seem like a wit, but it's a fan edit.
You know what E.B. White said about analyzing humor? That analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Have you heard this? It's like dissecting a frog. People aren't very interested, and the frog dies of it. Which happens when you try to say, here's why that joke was funny. Well, you see, at first you thought I was talking about. That's not very funny.
I agree. I mean, I don't know what. All I can say that was all my other books. Also, I enjoyed language a lot, and and I can manipulate the reader to maybe cry using language. Or I wrote a book which is very Victorian prose, and that was super fun. And so these felt similar in that way, that I could turn to the source and find the most hilarious word for what I wanted, and that felt like part of the humor, was picking a word that would be way too overblown in a serious novel, but would just be hilarious in this one.
Do you have an example?
I wish I did. I know I say that
I believe
kind of thing,
you.
and then I don't know
I don't
what I'm
need you to
talking
prove
about.
it. I believe you. Just wondering.
Oh. I can't think of it.
That's fine.
Right, give me a second.
Oh, okay.
Ask me another question. Let's see
Okay.
if I come up with one. It must be somewhere.
There is a lot of talk in both Less and Less is Lost about Arthur's first love, Robert, being a genius. everybody keeps asking Arthur what it was like to live with genius. And I found myself thinking, I don't hear that word used to describe writers a lot anymore.
No.
And I'm wondering, do they still make geniuses?
I think they never made them, they just crowned them. Like, I think there were 5 places, and they were all the same type of man, and that now we have like 100 places, and that's better, and those men aren't there anymore. And I just made that up the idea right now. But I do think that there's a lot more sharing of, I think a lot of writers have to learn how to share this space. So like for me, I won a Pulitzer Prize, and people are like, do you want to win another one? And I'm like, that would be terrible. Like, that should go to someone else. Yes, I want to win another one, but like, I shouldn't want that, because it would change someone else's life, rather than I could have another paperweight. That was stupid.
A very heavy paperweight, I hope.
It is. They give you a crystal paperweight and in a Tiffany box, and you're like, wow, the Pulitzer Prize, and they say clearly, this is not a Pulitzer Prize. This is a paperweight. The only actual Pulitzer Prize is a medal that's given to the public service winner. Enjoy your paperweight. Oh. So you can't, it's just like a stand-in
for the idea of the prize?
Yeah, Ronan Farrow got a medal.
Really?
As he should have. Yeah. He got a medal. And I met him. He brought his mother, Mia Farrow, for the teenager. I brought my mother to the Pulitzer Prize ceremony, which is a luncheon in a library at Columbia University. And my mother went up to Mia Farrow, and she said, Miss Farrow, I'm prouder of your son than I am of my own.
What?
Classic Sandra Greer.
Does she talk like that?
I made her sound a little Charleston, but
yeah, it's very
little
Charleston.
foghorn leghorn, yeah. Wow, Miss Farah. But it was just amazing to me. I was like, that's what you're going to say to me. Thanks, Mom.
Well, you will cherish that memory for the rest of your life.
I will. Also, her idea, I flew her out for this. And like, and I put her up at my same like stupid hipster hotel. And she bought a special hat on Amazon to wear. And I met her, I was dressed ridiculously in a bright red suit.
Oh, yes, famously.
Yeah, it's just, and then I went to her door, and she was dressed like a widow at an Italian funeral. She has like a veil.
For a luncheon.
Miss Sarah. It was so dramatic. It's like she'd lost her son to the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh. To the idea of the Pulitzer Prize. You don't even have a medal.
That's right. Right. To a paperweight.
Tragedy.
There's always humiliation, even in your best moments. If you just pay attention. Yeah.
Pay attention.
My mother's lovely.
So one of my personal favorite moments that made me shriek with delight in this book was the revelation that Arthur Less's grandfather was a butcher at the Piggly Wiggly. Y'all know the Piggly Wiggly. I know that you don't have Piggly Wiggly in San Francisco.
No, we don't.
So I have brought you something.
What have you brought? I'm not aware of this. I remember a pig.
It is the generic Piggly Wiggly brand, Right Choice.
Okay. Yeah. Like Kirkland Signature.
That's right. So let's see. Do you know the Piggly Wiggly sells a lot of branded merchandise?
I was not aware.
So for First, we've got a little Piggly Wiggly t-shirt
I love this.
from Nashville, Tennessee. In Lessian blue, you'll note.
Oh my word.
The back says, "What happens at the pig stays at Nashville, Tennessee."
That is fantastic. Can I cinch it, do you think?
Unfortunately, the selection was not as broad as the Piggly Wiggly in Monteagle, Tennessee, my preferred Piggly Wiggly. They have more t-shirts than you could ever dream. I have one that on the back has the Piggly Wiggly pig, but he's showing his butt, and it says, "Every butt loves a good rub."
I'm not going to wear that in San Francisco.
Okay.
Thank you for this more subdued one.
Well,
This is so wonderful.
as I was asking her, they keep the merch behind the counter at the one in Nashville. I don't know if they're worried about it walking off, but as I started asking about the t-shirt, she was like, "Here, these don't sell. You can have these too." This is a Piggly Wiggly gator. You know, those things that aren't masks that...
that kind of gator.
If during the pandemic you met somebody who was wearing one as a mask, you're like, don't talk to them because they're gonna not want to put on a real mask.
Well,
So this is for you.
kindly.
You don't have to hold it. Just know that it's here.
I was going to wear it right now.
Oh, here. Yeah, there's instructions about all the different ways you can wear it as a head wrap and just whatever.
Oh my.
You can wear it as like a mask.
Oh yeah, why wouldn't this sell?
You can wear it as a do-rag. I don't know.
And here's one you can wear it as a blindfold.
Yes. Yeah,
course you
that's all.
can.
You can do all those things with
This is like
one.
an intern's job. Like, what can you do with this? Write down 20 ways.
She threw in some Piggly Wiggly hand sanitizer, and she threw in some Piggly Wiggly a lanyard.
Oh, thank you.
Here you go. You can have that. Yeah. Anyway, there you go.
I'm set.
You're set.
Yeah.
Now,
There.
now, no one will ever harass you in Tennessee ever again. That's
Never.
how that works,
No,
right?
not with the gator.
Not with the put a
That
gator
is
over
really,
your face.
my mother will really love that.
There's an extra in here, so you can give her
Oh,
one.
I'll give her one. Yeah.
Yes.
She won't wear that, though.
That's fine. No one will.
No one
That's
has a
why it was
blindfold.
free.
I will wear it. I'll wear it as a head wrap.
I welcome you to do
I will
this.
Instagram that for you and tag you in it.
Oh, thank you. I would love to see that. Okay, well, we can take some questions now. If anybody else would like to ask a question, here we go.
That's a good question because, as writers, we're told not to write about being a writer, that it's really boring to other people, which is why you have a lot of books that are about, like, painters. That, like something similar, sculptresses. I think it's simply the fact that we are writers that we notice what's funny about being a writer because it's so peculiar and super embarrassing most of the time. And then there's moments of just utter, like it's feast or famine. And other people's lives are probably, although scraping by in the way writers do, it's not this weird up and down of hope and despair internally, and then also money, and then also just silly things you're invited to. Yeah. So I think that's it. Because it's nonsense. Also, it's built on nothing. So that's why it can go up or fall down, because it's, it's like, playing cards or NFTs.
Anyone else? I could bring you a microphone if you're concerned about projecting.
Someone has a question. Okay, here we go. Yes. What's your name, by the way? We keep talking about you.
My name is William.
William. Hi.
William.
So, okay, there's that sequence in Less where that describes Arthur finding out that his dad had the book about rearing a sissy son. I have to ask, is that a true event? Because that exact sequence of events happened to me.
But it couldn't. Was it? Yes, it did. It was a book called Growing Up Straight. Yeah, but yours couldn't have been the same book because mine, we have a small age disparity.
Yes.
And I'm sure that book was not still in print. Yeah.
No, mine was a Catholic one. It was, yes.
And did you recognize parts of it that were like, because mine, it was underlying like, take your son on a camping trip. Do not invite the mother, play Mumbledy-Peg.
Yes, I did.
That was Harper's Ferry,
About
yeah.
road trips.
Road trips, yeah. I didn't, my parents did get rid of the copy that I saw, but I got one online, and all the lesbian parts are highlighted in the one I have. So it's actually, I'm like, oh, you poor daughter, whatever happened to her? But, so it's not as painful, because I'm like, you know, learn how to bake a cake. I'm like, I did that, perfect, and I'm not a lesbian, yeah. I'm so sorry that happened to you, but are you okay now? You're here.
100%, right? Just no
Oh, gosh.
scars, nothing.
Oh, I'm like living in a I don't even know.
You're the resident teen at the
Resident
Southern
teen.
Festival of Bugs. You've made it.
Yeah, William.
Yes.
But I have to say, I have an identical twin brother who's straight and who is every bit the sissy that I am. And so, and it also, he and I both were like, wasn't that fun? We went to Harper's Ferry and found arrowheads and played Mumbledy-Peg with Dad, who is also not the biggest macho guy on the planet. Like, he's like a mild-mannered chemist. So the whole premise of like, teach your son how to be just like you was gonna fail, you know?
The call is coming from inside the house.
Oh, gosh. So mild-mannered we are, yeah. Yeah! Wow, you got my book, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, more coded. More coded. I got to get your
Troubled.
story later. Okay, wow. Harper's Ferry has changed everyone's lives. And my dad now lives there. That's what's weird.
Wow, the world is so poetic. Any other questions? Also, do you have any lingering questions about the South that we can address for you
Oh
today?
my gosh, that would be so helpful.
Uh-huh.
It feels like a foreign country in this one way. You know how in Spain or something, you call someone tú if they're your age or younger, and then, you know, it's vosotros if they're older. When do I sir and ma'am?
Yeah.
Is there an age?
I mean,
Or is it everybody? 12-year-olds? Ma'am?
yeah, there is some like power dynamics to sir and ma'aming for sure. It's a show of deference. So like your teacher in school, sir and ma'am, or else watch out. But I mean, I know I'm in my, early 30s. I know a lot of people my age who are having these experiences of going to the grocery store and having somebody tell you, thank you, ma'am, and us being like, what did you say to me? How dare you? And so there is apparently some sort of perceived age, but maybe that's it. If they're younger than me, all they see is this woman is older than me, and to them that means old. And so they tell me, have a good day, ma'am, and I have to just carry that with me.
So I'm walking into a minefield with no guidance.
Yes, but that's how we do it.
Thank you, ma'am. Or as they would say in my part of the world, thank you, madam.
Oh, bless your heart.
I know what that means. Yes, sir. I don't want to go over on time, but.
Yes.
It was different for you writing essentially that being in America from it being overseas.
From a foreigner. I detect an accent. Yes, although oddly, I was overseas when I wrote Less, because I was living in Milan with my boyfriend locked into an apartment during the pandemic. So I was looking at it from abroad, which is a great way to see your own country, because it gives some clarity. You know, my friends in San Francisco freak out a lot about what Marjorie Taylor Greene has to say. But when you're in Italy, they don't report that.
Thank God.
Because like that person is not important. That's one representative of a lot, and like they're not interested. They have their own people like that there, and I don't know their names. And so like it starts to clarify, like, here's the news cycle I can pay attention to, and this one is just trying to get me riled up, and that's helpful. And it's funny to see how at least Italians, how they see Americans, because I find that really interesting. And I have him, there's a Czech writer who accosts Les at a funeral in the first part of this book, and tells him, the problem with American writers is you never ask yourself, what if the whole idea of America is wrong? Which, as Americans, we never do. We're always like, we're gonna come back, it's gonna be great, we're the best country in the world. And in the book, I kind of think to myself, what if the whole idea is wrong? Like, there weren't a lot of copies of the presidential system. They went to Parliament right away, diffusing the power. So like, what if it's wrong, Just quietly asking it. And the Italians either definitely ask that or never do, because they're completely enamored of America, and their own system is clearly not very functional. Yeah. It's interesting.
But you did, so you were locked in Italy writing this book, but you did visit these places in person before that.
Yeah. I had a rule, this was the same rule as I had in Less. My 2 rules for Less, which was that I could only write down details that I wrote down in my notebook while visiting, because I didn't want to write a fantasia of another country, and that the joke always had to be on Arthur Less. I couldn't make fun of the people in the country, because their subway system, however bizarre, is normal. Yeah. And the problem is Arthur Less failing to use it properly. He's the funny one there. And so I was like, same rule applies here. So there's gentle ribbing, but he's the thing that's out of place.
Yes, I will say, as the ambassador to the South to you today, it was not the butt of the joke. It was just him in it, realizing in many ways that he had misunderstood it, as he has misunderstood seemingly everything before.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I was on a live radio variety show in Oxford, Mississippi a few weeks ago. They were like, all right, you're on, you've got 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? I thought it's live. There's like banjos and everything. And they're like, and now Pulitzer Prize-winning novelist Andrew Sean Greer will hold your attention. And I don't know why they think we're known for that. Or what other writers might have done in the future, or whether it was a new thing they were trying out, or whether they had enemies listening. But I did, luckily the host did ask me some questions, because he had to make it clear to the audience that it was not like a Californian making fun of Mississippi, that he had read the book, and that there's so many of those. And it's just, first of all, it's not even funny, because it's so like cliched. That's one reason to stay away. And also, it's not interesting to me. It doesn't explore me. So that's why I was really interested in what I was wrong about.
Well, that's a great way to come at it. We talk a lot, at least my friends and I, who are writers who live in the South, talk a lot about the books that get published about the South. And it's like, wow, somebody in New York loves kudzu and red dirt and peach cobbler, because I guess that's what they think it is. And so these books keep getting produced, and the people who live in the South read them and go, oh my God, makes me roll my eyes. I can't stand it.
I have just had a struggle with a magazine that shall go unnamed, where a food magazine with a Frenchy name that you might say just before serving a meal.
Julia Child might, perhaps.
Yeah, could be anything. Voila. And they were like, we're having writers write a food that is a memory and tell us a story of it. So I was like, fried pies that my grandma used to make. And I gave them her recipe. And they were like, do you mind if we substitute the margarine with butter? I'm like, I'm sure she wouldn't mind that. It's a different recipe. They're like, do you mind if we don't use dried peas, but we have frozen cooked peas and that we cooked them down to a compote and add pine nuts and raisins. I'm like, I'm giving the money back. They were worried. They didn't want Crisco in there. They had all of these changes, and I'm like, it's not like a Scandinavian dessert. It's like something made in World War II with margarine. If you want my memory, you know, the struggle's not done yet. There's all this editing stuff where they won't believe the things that I'm saying because they're New Yorkers and they're like, that doesn't sound likely.
They're editorializing Crisco.
Yeah. And as my mother said, like they took out the trans fats from Crisco.
Oh,
it's still
they
hydrogenated.
did?
Yeah,
Wow.
they changed the formula.
That's nice. I'd use it anyway, probably still.
No, it's just the same shortening.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or I wrote to them, I said you could use lard.
Mm-hmm. They could.
Yeah.
They probably taste great.
They're not up to the task.
I know.
Voila.
French named magazines. Well, that seems like a pretty good note to end on. Okay, we're going after this straight to the signing tent over a block down on the plaza. And so come on down if you want to keep chatting. Bring your book or buy the book and stand and chat. Come and chat with us. And yeah, we'll see you over there. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much. That was
you're
fantastic.
welcome.
Thank you for these.